What up, fight fans? I am Marisol and welcome back to my channel. So this past weekend we had a great fight with Zhang Weili against Jessica Andrade, and Zhang is now the strawweight champion. So this fight sparked some really interesting thoughts in my mind about women's MMA and the current state of it. So let's go ahead and get into it. With this new champion in the UFC, the strawweight champion that is now Zhang Weili, it really had me thinking about the state of women's MMA, and more specifically, what really struck me, the initial spark, that initial thought that led me down this rabbit hole of thoughts, was the fact that in the UFC, we now have 3 extremely dominant women champions. So in the UFC, we have 4 different women's divisions. It could be argued that there isn't much of a featherweight division for the women, but there is a current champion in that division. So we're going to count it as 4. So we have the 115 strawweight, 125 in the flyweight, 135 bantamweight, and 145 in the featherweight. So Amanda Nunes is a double champ. She's champ, so at the 145 and the 135 divisions. And of course, right now we have Amanda Nunez and Shevchenko are extremely dominant, and I fully believe that Zhang is going to be an extremely dominant champion in the strawweight division as well. So to get into it a little bit more, to get into the nuts and bolts of it, Amanda Nunes is undeniably just dominant in both divisions. Again, we're going with the premise that the featherweight division for women is alive and well, and she's again defeated everybody that she possibly could at 145. And there is crossover between the women for the 135 and the 145 divisions. So she's defeated really just pound for pound amazing female fighters in the 135 division as well. Most notably and most recently, Holly Holm and Cris Cyborg. Cris Cyborg now is out and about looking for another organization. So I'll be talking a little bit about that later. So Amanda Nunes, she's amazing when it comes to the striking. We will never forget her knockouts of Ronda Rousey and, of course, most recently Cris Cyborg. And she has that ground game. So there isn't really anybody there to really question her or to really challenge her. So we're seeing this in both of the divisions as well, especially since there is a lot of crossover between the women in those divisions. Most recently, or coming up soon, she is going to be fighting Germaine de Randamie, which, again, the fight was announced, and again, like I just said, there isn't really anybody there to challenge her, and I don't think Germaine de Randamie is going to be a huge challenge. It could be interesting if it stays standing, but again, if it does get taken to the ground, I think that Amanda Nunes definitely has it. But anyway, I'll be doing a video on that once the fight comes a little closer. That fight is in December, so we have some time to really think about it and see how they go about their fight camps. Anyway, going on to Valentina Shevchenko, who is extremely dominant. I mean, I'm sure all of us remember the kick heard around the world this summer when she had kicked Jessica Ai. That was brutal. So again, Shevchenko, crazy dominant, and her grappling is extremely proficient as well. I do think she can strengthen her grappling. I did talk about that in a video when I analyzed her fight against Liz Carmouche, where again her grappling was good enough to get her to a bit of a stalemate with Liz Carmouche, but if she could really focus on being more offensive in her grappling, then it could just catapult her skill over, make her even more dominant, essentially. But I do think that there isn't really much of a challenge there when it comes to Shevchenko as well. But I mean, we'll see. You never know the skills that people are developing and what have you. But for the time being, I think that Shevchenko is going to dominate the 125 division. And now when it comes to Zhang Weili, the new strawweight champion, again, I did a fighter profile on her. She is relatively new to the UFC, so go check out that fighter profile if you have not seen it or do not know much about her. I do detail her background, so definitely check that out. I'll link it down below. But her striking is extremely powerful. She knocked out Jessica Andrade. Jessica Andrade is a powerhouse. Like, she is one strong chick. And Zhang, which you wouldn't necessarily expect it, but she was powerful in her striking, got the KO win, is now the champion. At the same time, let's not forget that her grappling is great. She has that grappling background and she has won via submission in the past. And to emphasize her dominance, she is on a 20-fight win streak. So I think that we have a very formidable champion at the 115 division, that weight class. And looking at the roster, seeing who's coming up, I don't really see anybody who's going to be a huge challenge for her since she is so well-rounded. The only weakness that may possibly be there, perhaps somebody who could potentially dominate in a fight, would be a wrestler. Carla Esparza, she is currently 8th, I believe, in the rankings, so she does have some ways to go before she can get a title shot, but she does have a wrestling background, so perhaps that may be a pathway to victory for somebody against Zhang, but again, she still has that grappling background, which will only get better as time goes on. So once it is on the ground, she still has a fighting chance. But again, 3 very dominant champions in all of the UFC's women's divisions. So I think we're in a very exciting time for women's MMA in that regard. But let's not forget that women's MMA is also thriving in other organizations, one of them being the PFL with Kayla Harrison. Most recently, she did an interview with Brendan Schaub where she talked about how she is essentially the face of the PFL, and that she did mention that the PFL did create the 155 division just for her. So that is a huge investment in women's MMA in a whole new weight class, and then having somebody who is an Olympian also being the face of the organization, of women's MMA for that organization. And Kayla Harrison has also called out Chris Cyborg. And as we all know, Cyborg has struggled to get down to 145 in the past. So 155 should easily be an easier weight cut, but you know, who knows? But overall, I do think that if Cyborg, who is now a free agent, were to join the PFL, I think making that 155 weight cut would be easier for her. With that being said, we also do have Julia Budd, who is in Bellator. She's the 145 champion in Bellator and is also the inaugural champion as well. So again, another organization who is investing in women's MMA and creating other weight classes as well. So we're in a very exciting time for women's MMA. The UFC has stacked women's divisions with powerful champions, dominant champions, and we're seeing women's MMA growing even stronger in other organizations as well. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for women's MMA, also just the recent immediate future as to what happens with women's MMA with the current UFC champions, and then also what's going on outside of the UFC and other organizations as well. It's all very exciting, but let me know what you think down below. What do you think about the current state of women's MMA, and do you also think that Zhang Weili is going to be an extremely dominant champion at the 115 division? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe for more content. I'll be seeing you in the next one.